Hi, I'm Cassie, and today I'm reading part of one of my books that I wrote like a cozy bedtime story. Nothing fancy, I'm not a professional voice actor, I'm not an audiobook reader, I'm an author. And I want to share with you my story how I would read it. My dog might bark, my kids might laugh in the background, I might laugh at my own characters. And this is simply me hanging out with you, enjoying part of a good story. Yeah, are you ready? Let's jump right in.
Hey everyone, it's author Cassie and I'm so excited to have you here today because I'm going to read to you the first chapter of my book, A Simple Christmas Kiss. Now, this is one of those sweet, kind of cutesy romances, think Hallmark kind of movie. It's very clean, very sweet, appropriate for all ages as long as you don't mind a teeny bit of kissing, and it is just adorable. So I'm going to go ahead and get reading, and I hope that you enjoy the first chapter of A Simple Christmas Kiss by Cassandra Shiels, or me. And I really love that I get to read this to you and spend a little bit of time reading it in my voice, in the way that I think that the lines were supposed to be read. And again, I'm not a professional audiobook reader or an actor. I am an author, and I'm just excited to spend some time reading my book with you. And I hope that you can enjoy listening to a little bit of this story. So this book is written in dual point of view, and the first chapter is written in Lacey's point of view, which is my female main character. And I always label my chapters with a big label so you know whose point of view you're starting with. That way, hopefully you can avoid some of that confusion. Anyway, let's dive right into this cute little Christmas story. I'm wearing my Christmas pajamas just for the occasion, and I hope you enjoy. All right, here we go. A Simple Christmas Kiss by Cassandra Shiels. Chapter 1, Lacey. A rocked-out version of Silent Night blared through her car's tiny speakers. Lacey turned it up a little more, soaking in the sound of the familiar Christmas carol. Good grief, did she ever need it. Her brother's early Christmas card slid around on the passenger seat. She flicked it with her fingers and let the red envelope fall to the floor. The sentiment would have been nice if the card hadn't been full of gloating. Maybe he'd change one day, but his current actions spoke otherwise. A red light made her slam on her brakes only a block from her apartment. A new tree lot had been set up in a large, empty parking lot. She tapped her fingers together, debating for a minute over whether or not to turn into the tree lot. The pull of a tree was too strong for her to refuse. When the light turned green, she moved forward only one car length before she turned in and parked in the few spaces they'd left for the customers. Lacey pulled her long blonde hair back into a ponytail and shoved her dark red knitted hat onto her head. The way she saw it, she had two choices. She could feel miserable and alone for Christmas, or try her best to make it amazing. I'm going for amazing, she told herself, flung her car door open, and stepped out into the snow. Amazing starts with a tree. The song Jingle Bells floated through the air from the small shack nestled in the trees. Bill's Tree Farm was painted on a rough wooden sign hanging over the doorway. A large green wooden tree-shaped sign leaned against the small building. It had heights and prices painted on it in yellow. Lacey made a mental note of the prices before she moved into the fabricated forest. Couples and families wiggled around the trees, taking selfies and laughing. A group of teenagers ran past while they tried to whack each other in the face with tree branches. Lacey stifled a giggle at their playfulness. That's why she chose to teach high schoolers. She loved their buoyancy and how they were still kids at heart, who didn't entirely act like adults yet. She wandered around looking for a tree that would fit in her tiny one-bedroom apartment. A little beauty caught her eye. It looked fluffy and full of long green pine needles, and it appeared symmetrical on all sides. It was the kind of a tree a painter should use as a model if designing a Christmas card. She strode forward, excitement bubbling through her legs. She knew the tree was exactly what she needed to forget Caleb's rude Christmas card and forget that her whole family was in Hawaii for the month of December, except for her. She spotted a man with a tiny girl down the path from the opposite direction. The little girl saw the same tree Lacey admired and dotted over, arriving before Lacey did. Maybe they'd look it over and move on? It wasn't super big. Usually kids wanted a big tree. She hung back and pretended to look at a huge blue spruce beside the little charming tree. Daddy, it's so pretty, she squealed. The little girl had the cutest blonde pigtails nearly hidden by gigantic fuzzy pink earmuffs. A smile snuck slowly onto her lips. The girl had an eye for a good tree. Lacey couldn't blame the tiny girl for that. Yeah, it's a pretty tree, Holly, but that tree is a little small for our living room. I thought you wanted to find the biggest one on the lot, her dad said, turning away from the perfect Christmas card tree. The little girl tugged on her dad's arm. Can we get it, please? She placed her little pink gloved hands together and stuck out her lip. All right, thought Lacey. I'll find another one. That tiny girl could have this one. She turned to go and search for a different tree when a foursome of young teenage boys came careening by. Lacey stumbled back out of their way. The dad picked up Holly and pushed himself into the tree boughs to avoid the roughhousing boys. The tree branch nearest Lacey got caught on his jacket. He yanked hard to free himself, and the branch swung back toward Lacey. Before she could move, it flung back and hit her square on the bridge of her nose. Ouch! She yelped and fell to her knees. A few blood spots started the bright snow. She'd always been prone to nosebleeds. Her mom thought it was because she spent so much time indoors with her paint, but getting hit in the face never helped. Pinching her nose, she patted her jacket for a Kleenex, a rag, or something other than her nice white gloves. A hand touched her shoulder. Lacey jumped and looked up to see the dad and his little girl standing right beside her. She held her hand up in an attempt to hide her lower face. The last thing she wanted was to scare this girl because of the blood. He dropped to his knees in the snow next to her. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Lacey pinched her nose harder. I'm fine. She glanced up to see Holly with her hands covering her mouth. No, you're not here. He pulled off his long red scarf and handed it to her. I'll ruin it. It's really okay. Lacey tried to turn away. There had to be somewhere to hide. She didn't want this nice dad and his little girl to see her with blood all over her face. He reached out again and put a hand on her shoulder. The scarf's not special or anything. Please take it. Swallowing her pride, she took the offered scarf. Luckily, it was already red, and the dark color would hide most of this embarrassing moment. She sat down in the snow and held the scarf up to her nose, keeping her fingers pinched and her head down like she'd been taught. Suddenly, a little pair of arms wrapped around her, and a little fluffy pigtail tickled her cheek. It's okay. You'll feel better soon. Lacey hugged the sweet little girl and gave her an extra squeeze. I already do. Thank you. The man stood up and started to look around the tree yard. Is there someone with you we can help you find? Lacey shook her head. Nope. She was alone. Alone like usual. Her crummy old boyfriend had seen to that. No, I'm here alone, but I'm fine. This isn't my first nosebleed. Don't let me interrupt your Christmas tree adventure. The man seemed to consider her words for a moment before sitting beside her. I'm Rhett Green. This is my daughter, Holly. We're happy to wait here with you until you feel up to moving. Holly nodded and settled herself down in the snow next to her. Lacey felt a warmth ignite in her heart. She hadn't realized how much she needed an act of kindness. She offered Rhett her left hand since her right was holding the scarf under her nose. He shook it and thankfully didn't comment on the awkward angle. I'm Lacey Larson. Nice to meet you both. Rhett gave her a half-hearted chuckle. We are very pleased to meet you, too. I wish it were under better circumstances than hitting you in the nose with a tree branch. It's not broken, is it? Lacey felt the bridge of her nose again and shook her head. No, not broken. It might bruise, however, she teased, giving Holly a wink. Rhett placed his hand on his chest and did his best to look horrified. Holly giggled at both of them, and Lacey felt tempted to join her. Thank you, she thought. She needed someone to lift her spirits after her brother's horrible Christmas card. At that moment, she didn't care if it took a tree branch to meet these two. I like your scarf. Little fingers reached up and batted at the ends of her scarf. Lacey loved it too. It was covered in what looked like paint splotches. Small colored balls hung from each end, continuing the effect against her white coat. Thank you. Some of my students pulled their money and bought it for me last Christmas. She considered it the sweetest gift she had received as a teacher. She tried to wear it any chance she got, and her students beamed every time they saw it wrapped around her neck. Holly's eyes widened slowly. You're a teacher? Yep, I teach art at Alvin High School. Lacey pointed to her scarf. That's why I love this scarf so much. Holly clapped her hands. I love art too. I got to paint at preschool yesterday. Lacey's heart warmed even more toward the little girl. Painting was her favorite kind of art, and seeing how Holly's eyes lit up about the same thing made her day. I bet you love it a lot. Holly's cheeks turned bright pink. I wish I could paint every day. Lacey laughed lightly. I do too. She tenderly felt her nose. It didn't seem to be bleeding anymore. She glanced over at Rhett. He had his eyes on his gloves. He seemed like a good father. It was nice of him to help a stranger out like this, but she felt awful that they were both stuck with her in the freezing snow. Look, you don't have to wait for me. I'm sure your wife will worry if you're longer than expected. There. She'd give them a way out so they didn't feel obligated to stay with her. Rhett's eyebrows shot up and his eyes flicked to his daughter, and then he shook his head and mouthed, "Divorced." His eyes shot back to Holly, who was messing with her fluffy pink mittens, thankfully not paying attention to their conversation. Sorry, Lacey whispered. Rhett shrugged. Lacey knew she shouldn't, but her mind exploded with lots of questions. Why wasn't he married anymore? Did Holly live with him? Would they get to spend Christmas together, or would he have to spend it alone as well? Lacey softly tapped his scarf under her nose. One thing was for sure. She wasn't about to sit here looking like a mess and stop them from their Christmas tree hunt. Her Christmas might feel dreary, but she wasn't about to pass the feeling on to someone else. I'm going to go see if they have a restroom. She made to stand up while still holding the scarf under her nose. Rhett shot to his feet and helped pull her up. For the first time, Lacey got a good look at his face. His deep blue eyes, kind smile, and the faint scent of musky cologne made her heart leap in her chest. Thanks. She turned away from Rhett. She didn't want to give her heart any more reason to keep beating out of normalcy. She bent slightly and pointed past Holly. You should get that one. She indicated the tree which Holly and she agreed was the best of the bunch. It's the perfect Christmas tree. Holly giggled and clapped her hands. Yes, I thought so too. Lacey looked down at the scarf under her nose. Do you want this back? She hated to ask the question, but what if he thought she'd wash it and return it good as new? She seriously doubted her laundry skills regarding a blood-soaked scarf and didn't want to disappoint him. He shook his head. I swear, it isn't important to me. Just toss it. Thanks again. She smiled at Rhett and took off before she convinced herself to stay. Just because he sat next to her and made sure she was okay was no reason to let her heart leap in her chest or to assume he wanted to get to know her better. A single dad probably wasn't on the hunt anyway. Not that she cared. She'd sworn off guys for at least a year anyway. Her mom assured her that was the only way to avoid making another mistake like Drew. She shuddered and forced all thoughts of that man out of her head. Satisfied with her pep talk, she raced to the little shack, and luckily they had a tiny one-stall bathroom. Honestly, it looked like one step up from a porta potty. She washed her face and hands and examined her nose. It would probably bruise a little, but it wasn't broken. She shook her head. Her students were going to love this. She could already hear the rumors and the stories they'd make up about how she'd broken her nose. She tossed Rhett's scarf into the garbage before she stepped out into the cold. Straightening her back, she adjusted her scarf, ready to appear put together. She never expected to see Rhett or Holly again, but they stood at the checkout stand a few feet away. When she looked around for her escape route, Holly waved at her and pointed to the 2 trees leaning against the counter next to them. Rhett grinned at her, wide enough to crinkle the skin around his eyes. We didn't know if you'd feel up to wandering around to find a tree. Is this one okay? The 2 trees were almost twins. Lacey couldn't believe how thoughtful they were. He was right. With the way her nose still felt, she probably would have gone home treeless, climbed under a fuzzy blanket, and watched TV all night. She blinked back the unexpected tears and nodded. Thank you. It's perfect. Holly jumped up and down, tugging on her dad's coat. See, Daddy? I knew she would like it. Rhett smiled brightly at his little girl, and Lacey's heart melted a little more. They obviously had a good relationship. It was nice to know dads like him existed in the world for cute little pigtail girls. After paying for their trees, Rhett insisted on carrying them out to the parking lot. Holly took Lacey's hand when they turned to walk out of the tree lot. Lacey glanced at Rhett. Did he mind? She nodded toward Holly's hand in hers and hoped her eyes would ask her question for her. She didn't want to upset the sweet girl, but she needed her dad's permission. Rhett nodded his approval, and she immediately felt better about taking the little girl's hand and leading her safely through the parking lot. Holly beamed up at Lacey while they walked. Do you live far away from here? Holly asked with bright eyes. Nope. Lacey pointed to the right. I live right around the corner on the next block. Holly's eyes grew wide. Me too! My building is the color red. Lacey loved how that one little detail stuck in Holly's head. Mine is red too. Holly's mouth dropped open and she let out a little squeal. You live at Rosie Harry Apartments too? Rhett snorted. She means Rosenberry. Lacey looked from one to the other. Seriously? They couldn't have lived in the same building all this time and never met. Granted, her building had 8 floors, but still, what were the odds? Yeah, that's where I live too. Rhett smiled. That's great. Then I can help bring the Christmas trees inside. That is if you're okay with me dragging your tree inside for you. Usually she would have refused the help, insisting that she could handle it on her own, but today she wouldn't. Not this time. This time she wanted their help. This time she wanted a few more minutes of the warm feeling in her chest that these two brought with them. She pointed to her little Honda and Rhett turned toward her car. Thank you. I'd appreciate the help. Well, that is chapter 1 of A Simple Christmas Kiss. I hope you enjoyed me reading it a little bit with my author voice and how I saw some of the lines. If you liked this beginning chapter, I hope that you will go and check on this book where it is available on Amazon and many other locations for sale. So thanks so much for joining me, and I'm so glad that you could be a part of this little bit of reading time with author Cassie.